Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Full Potential Show. I'm James Rick. This is your number one non-boring source for personal development. And today on the line, we have Linda Larsen. She's an author and creator of the audio program 12 Secrets to High Self-Esteem. Today's show is about answering the wake-up call, your power of choice. The universe is calling. Are you answering? Linda also has a background as being an actress and a consultant to attorneys. Her website is lindalarsen.com. And Linda, thank you so much for being on today's show.
Thank you, James. I'm glad to be here.
You know, I called and you answered the call. That was great. It worked out. So let's talk about what it means. First of all, your story of being kidnapped by an escaped convict and held by gunpoint, I imagine, for 5 hours. Talk to me about what your life was like a little bit before that, and then boom, that was your wake-up call to do something different. Talk to me about that.
First of all, good insight on your part to go to what happened before that, because for me, that was the most revealing part of the whole story. I was a young woman. I was 21 years old, and not unlike many other people in the world, I had problems. I had challenges at 21 years old. I was married, divorced. I had a 2-year-old baby. I remember I was making $55 a week, believe it or not, as a receptionist for a law office. The really important thing here, though, was that at the time I was suffering from debilitating, horrific panic and anxiety attacks. And they were really, really bad. They had gotten to the point where several times I came very, very close to suicide. And this was exactly what had happened the morning of December 7th, 1969. I was 21 years old. I know you're probably doing a little math in your head.
Unimaginable.
Thank you for that. But I woke up on that morning and I remember, James, I slipped right into that dark place, terrified. I remember lying in bed with the covers up around my neck, just gasping for air. And I remember
before any kidnapping occurred.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. December 7th.
Where do you go from there when somebody kidnaps you?
Well, that actually was my wake-up call. That morning, now this is the interesting part. That morning, as I lie there thinking that I was ready to die, those words kept going over in my head. I kept thinking, I'm ready to die, because I did not know how I could make it for one more day. And if anyone has ever suffered from any kind of depression or anxiety or any kind of mental illness, they certainly understand what that's like. It's terrifying. And it was just at that moment when I kept hearing those words, I'm ready to die. And by the way, those are important words that come back in the story in just a second. I heard my son stirring in the room next to mine, and I knew that I absolutely had to make it, somehow had to make it. So I got myself up. I got him to daycare. I went to work. I sat behind that receptionist desk at that law office where I was working. And I remember I felt like I was hanging on to my sanity by a thread. And that was the morning at 11:15 a.m. In through the front door burst a man in a convict prison uniform brandishing a .357 Magnum. Turns out he had escaped from a road gang. He had jumped the guard and stolen a gun and fled on foot into the first office he found. It was mine.
Law office, no less.
A law office. It was right around the corner from where the road gang was. He slammed the gun in my face. He grabbed me by the arm, and he said to the two attorneys who were standing there then, he said, give me your car keys, give me your money. I'm leaving. I'm taking her with me. Don't call the cops or I will kill her. And away we went. Now, I mean, if you stop and think for just a moment to the emotional state that I was in before the man came in the room, you can only imagine where I might have gone at that point.
I just right there. I want to just back up for a second. What were you so terrified of? Look, I understand people have anxiety and depression and everything else. I mean, that time when somebody's got a gun in your face, that's the time that I would start freaking out. I'm just wondering, is it something? What caused that condition? In your opinion, I think there's a variety of reasons, but what for you was causing that condition?
That's the interesting thing. Sometimes mental illness has an external cause and sometimes it has an internal cause. I happen to have grown up in a home where there was a lot of physical, mental abuse. And I know that I suffered as a result of that. And I believe that the panic attacks I had started feeling at age 18, 19, 20 years old were probably a direct result of that kind of a...
That makes sense to me. So this earlier caused this repressed emotion of this earlier traumatic time, physically and mentally, by family members. This repressed emotion was just kind of boiling. It needed to be dealt with. It hadn't been dealt with, right?
Yes, James. Okay. And if you look at it from a kind of pull out of the picture and look from far away, I even see a pattern here. I see that as a young girl, I was a victim. I see that as a child growing up in a home full of alcoholism and crazy stuff, that I was a victim. And I find it really interesting that my big wake-up call came as a victim of an escaped convict. So it seemed to me that there was this theme that kept playing over and over again in my life.
This was the breaking point.
This was the breaking point. But see, here's the thing. I believe that in all of our lives, there's a theme that keeps playing. We keep finding ourselves in the same kind of relationships with the same kind of people, or in the same dead-end jobs, or we're always the one who gets overlooked, or this always happens to us over and over again. And I think that's very common.
Dude,
Mine's
that's a profound insight. So everybody watching and listening right now, what is a recurring theme in your life? And do you like the pattern? Okay, so now we jump back. We're back. The guy has got you by the hair. He's pulling you out the door. Gun to the back of your head.
Something. I actually don't even remember the specifics of that. I think it was in my ribs, actually. He put me in the car of the attorney that had given us his car keys, and he took me to an abandoned house, and there he held me hostage for 5 hours. And that, all I can say is, it was the most surreal experience that a human being can have. But my wake-up call, the aha moment, the moment when it all just sort of popped into focus was at one point when he had allowed me to sit in a chair in this room. It was about 2 or 3 hours after he had taken me to this house. And out of nowhere, he slowly raised his gun. He pointed it right between my eyes, and his exact words, this exact words were, "Are you ready to die?"
Wow.
Now,
that gives me chills. And you said this was playing in your head that morning. I'm ready to die. I'm ready to die. And here's the universe answering your call in the form of this escape con saying, "Really?" Yeah,
exactly. Say, "Are you sure?
Are you ready?
You asked for it. I'm going to give it to you. Did you mean it?"
Wow.
So, the moral of the story there for every person on the planet
Words are powerful.
Be so careful what you wish for. They are so powerful. They are so powerful.
I want you to continue, but before you do, I just want to validate this point. We're like, especially when it comes to life and death. I recall a time, I'd read all these books, I'd gone through all these philosophies. I've never, especially in Buddhist philosophies and stuff like that, a lot of that is centered around focusing on the temporariness of life and death and all that. And I said, I'm actually just curious. I've seen a lot of things on this earth. I'm ready to die. I was like really playing this around in my head. I know it sounds crazy, but I said, I'm curious. I would just like to know what this is all about. I'm ready to die. And literally that day, I started to get chills, and I started to feel like I was going to die. And then I changed my mind. I said, and then I immediately got better. So this is it's nobody burst into my room, thank heavens. But this is there's a link here. So this guy, he's pointing the gun at your head, saying, "Are you ready to die?" And now you really have to contemplate it. What was your response?
Well, it was. Well, let me lead up to that moment, because everything slowed down, as you can well imagine. Every 2 seconds felt like about 30 minutes worth of calculation in my head that I had the time to calculate. So every word that I said, every motion, every nonverbal body language cue that I gave was very calculated. But the overriding thought in my head was, no, I am not ready to die. That was in my head. That was the answer. I mean, it's ironic that I thought I was that morning, but at that moment, I knew I wasn't. And it's what that told me is that no matter how desperate things get or how bad they feel at times, they can get worse. They absolutely can get worse.
There's a lesson for you.
Seriously. And that if you have this frame of reference that, like, for instance, right now, I look back and go, oh, nothing's that bad. Give me a difficult person. Bring them on. Bring the worst, most difficult, challenging situation you got. Piece of cake. Because I have that as a frame of reference. So I like to think no matter how bad something gets, it can always be worse. I just happen to have experienced the worst, but I know it can be. So I knew that my answer was no, and I knew that everything I said to him had to be an endeavor, very subtly, to establish some kind of rapport with him so that he would let down his guard just enough so that I could escape. So it's interesting that my entire programming was on survival.
It shifted. In that moment, it was, I have something to live for. I'm not ready to die.
I think it was the minute he slammed the gun in my face back at the office and said, I'm leaving and I'm taking you with me. That's right there. Everything shifted. Because from that moment on, my brain was on, how do I escape? How do I survive?
And this is really important because not many people are going to have that kind of connection with the universe where the universe is just going to say, okay, I'm going to challenge you with this person with a gun in your face. Right now, there's a lot of people that are going through challenges that might be going to extremes in their mind. But when the cards are really on the table, a person who has been there in the darkest of places, ready to die, is saying that the perspective shifted when you were really on that final stage of you really did have a choice. And I choose to survive. I choose something better for my life. And tell me the meaning that came out of that. I mean, obviously you made it out alive and he didn't end up killing you because of the choice that I think you made that led to your survival. What changes did you make in your life that have led to where you are today?
I think the number one thing is recognizing that I always have a choice in any given situation as to how I want to deal with it or respond to it or manage it. I always have a choice. I felt so powerless in my life leading up to that event. I mean, totally powerless victim. That's the way I felt about everything.
That makes sense. Because you got that programming when you were a child. Feeling like you were powerless, the victim.
And here's what's interesting. How you see yourself determines every relationship you have in life. I mean, we know that. If I see myself as a victim, how am I going to relate with every friend I might ever have, or how well I do in school, or what choices I make in terms of what I want to be when I grow up? If I believe that I'm a victim and I'm powerless, you can see what kind of choices I would make. I think it comes down to the interpretation that we place on the events that happen in our lives, and that, for me, was what this was. Because right afterwards, going back to your question, I think I was reeling from it. I think it was such a shock to my system that it took me quite a while to try to sort this out and figure out what happened in terms of days and weeks that followed. But I had a choice, and this was big, James. I had a choice afterwards. There was a part of me that knew I could go in down path A, and that path was to conclude that life really was a scary place. And I really was a victim. And you see, they were going to get me because, I mean, hey, the guy with the gun came after me, didn't come after anybody else. I must be a bad person if he's going to come and get me. So what I should do is hide for the rest of my life, stay in my room, never go out, never trust anyone. I mean, you can see where that might have been a logical conclusion to make after that event. Or I could go down path B, which was the one that I chose. And that was my interpretation that I placed on this event was that it was absolutely the greatest gift I had ever been given in my life, that I would have succumbed to my illness. I would have taken my own life if I hadn't had this enormous wake-up call and had this situation where I could understand the preciousness of life. That's how I chose to view it. And my life has been radically different than it would have been if I'd made the other choice.
And because now you're coming from that place of gratitude for this gift, for this choice, and then now you're in this new pattern of choosing, whereas before you were in a pattern of victimhood. And that was the theme. So the theme shifted, and I think that's the bigger message here is, you literally are the creator of your own theme. just based on what you believe, based on, at first, yes, early experiences, but later how you interpret those experiences determine what kind of theme you're living in. Do you like your theme park? Do you like the victim theme, or now
James,
you're kind of now you're the choice theme? You're empowered, and that's really what empowerment is: being in power over your own choices and kind of dictating as much as possible your destiny, because we can't control all circumstances. But that's a great metaphor. This guy coming into your life, brandishing the gun, asking you if you're going to live or not. You didn't have control over whether he was going to pull the trigger or not, but you had a lot of control over how you responded to him in a way that led to your survival.
And that's exactly what happened, because again, I was so tuned into what every moment was a choice. Every single moment after each moment was a choice. Right now, what do I need to say, and how do I need to say it in order to calm him down, to relax him, to make him feel a little bit of connection with me, such that ultimately I can escape. So it was a moment to moment to moment experience.
Another important message there too, Linda, is that heightened awareness. Everybody's watching and listening right now. Ask yourself, what kind of heightened awareness do you need to bring to your experience to make better choices? Because I think that's something that nature has instilled in us, but unless we're on the forefront of challenge, unless we're, life or death, sometimes we don't reach deep inside and bring out the awareness that we need to make these better choices. And in that situation, you were forced, life or death decision mode time, to live in that heightened state of awareness and make the best choices that led to your survival and now have led to you living a thriving life, not just surviving, but thriving. Linda, just a phenomenal story, and something that I think will inspire a lot of people to heed their own wake-up call. Is there any final thoughts that you have for folks that are listening or watching today before we tell them where they can go to get this audio program, which includes details of your story?
I think you said the final thing for me, and it was about awareness. And it's about the idea that every given moment we're bombarded with all kinds of bits of information and stimulus, and we have a tendency to go on autopilot and do what we've always done and think what we've always thought. And I believe that if we take a stand and say, I choose to be more aware of what's going on here and what are my greater possibilities in this moment. I'm not going down what I've done before or thinking the way I've thought before. I choose to think something more empowering. What is it? How do I find it? Where is it? I'm looking and I'm open to receive it. I think then you'll begin to make some better choices.
And that awareness is the only way to break through old patterns. Otherwise, you get stuck in the theme. You get stuck in the patterns. Heightened awareness. Great points. LindaLarsen.com. That's LindaLarsen. Linda Larsen, LARSEN.com. And Linda, I know that you've got a free report that ties in with this, answering the call, the power of choice. They can email you for that. Where can they email you to pick up a copy of this free report just for you, special loyal viewers and listeners of the Full Potential Show? Where can they get that?
Linda Larsen at LindaLarsen.com.
Okay, email Linda Larsen at LindaLarsen.com. Could not be easier. And pick up your free report, Answering the Call, the Power of Choice. If the universe is calling, you can either listen and wake up, or like Linda had the choice of retreating into your home and never coming out again and letting it consume you, right?
Right.
So here it is. The choice is A or B, and Linda, you chose B, and I hope everybody who is getting a universal wake-up call, and I think it does call us often, doesn't it? I mean, maybe not in such dramatic form, but it does call to us to do what we are responsible to do in this short lifetime that we have. It does call to us, and we have the choice to listen and choose and empower our lives to follow that purpose. Linda, thank you again so much for being on the Full Potential Show.
Thank you, James.
It's a pleasure having you on. Take care. Well, that concludes this week's episode of the Full Potential Show, your number one non-boring source for personal development. I'm James Rick, and if you want to get more positive programming for your brain absolutely free on a weekly basis, just visit fullpotential.com.
If you like the Full Potential Show, you're going to love the Full Potential Club. What would you like most as a Full Potential Club member? Be 2 to 3 times more productive? Do what you're passionate about? Have more energy? Reduce your work hours? Travel the world? Enjoy an amazing lifestyle on a frugal budget? What if you could do them all? James Rick has been there and done it in ways that few people have. For anyone serious about taking their life or business to the next level, you know you've got to do more than just watch. You've got to do. Join James Rick and other like-minded people for an incredible $10 a month at fullpotential.com/club. Be educated. Be empowered. Be the best version of you. fullpotential.com/club. Try it free for 30 days.